out there. You you wouldn't have any jokes that kind of about science. And the number one rule of comedy is that if someone asks you for something, you say yes. Of course I do. Even if the answer is no, it's like I'll figure that out later. I'll get into it. And so I actually didn't really have a lot of material, anything to do with science. But once I knew I was getting a decent gig, I kind of sat down and wrote some up. So so that's been going for a few years now. So it's I'm still kind of there's one or two guys that would be kind of internationally known, or more in the Anglo sphere. A guy called Darrow O'Brien. So typically, when you want a real science comedian to get him, there's another guy. If you Colm O'Regan, if you can't get him, I'm number three. So they kind of land on me, and I'm the cheap one.
Y-
And
you still do you still do science as a profession though.
well, I'm an engineer by background, so I design microchips. And I've worked for Bell Labs and Intel, and they're probably the only names you've known. Bit of Philips as well. Philips
Hmm.
back in the day. So back when they used to actually, they're just a badging company now. They just kind of get stuff from China and just whack their badge on it. They're not really a technology company anymore.
Listen, man, I told you this before, like especially like in the industry that I'm in with automotive, like BMW, it's kind of hilarious because they stopped making their cars in China, but a lot of the components that they make, like even like the logic boards or the semiconductors or even connectors and different things of that, they're not made in Germany. They're made in China. And it's hilarious because like there'll be a label on the back of one of these communication modules, like for example, like a battery smart box, and it'll say made in Romania. And it's like that's cool, but if I open it up, the components are probably not made in Romania.
We have a company here. Well, it's technically German. I don't know if they have them in America yet. Aldi or Lidl.
Yeah.
That they kind of got. They've got every. Okay, so they do. But like sometimes they'll sell something called smoked Irish ham, and then sometimes they sell something called Irish smoked ham, and they're not the same thing. One is like has been smoked in Ireland, and one is ham that is probably Irish but may not have actually been smoked in Ireland. And so Irish smoked ham and smoked Irish ham are two different things
it,
legally,
it
and a lot of these things, you know, if you kind of really take them apart. So the big European automotive, like one of the big kind of things, the real thing that kind of rattled through there at the back end of COVID was the supply issue of chips. And there was one chip, there was like one display chip that kind of basically was just for the screens and cars, and they were sold out. And like for this one chip, and now a car can have thousands of them. They couldn't finish a car, so they couldn't sell a whole car. So they literally had cars they could not sell, even though it was 99.99% done. But this one chip they couldn't get their hands on, so they uh they had to hold it back. That was crazy.
was. And I mean, what's even crazier is when you look at, for example, like even the rebuilding market, where you have companies that they rebuild or remanufacture electronic components for a lot of these vehicles. They've had to move into manufacturing their own chips because what are you supposed to do? You can't really rely on China to get you all those components and those pieces all the time. They have delays through the wazoo, especially now in the US where you have the tariffs. It's like, is it really realistic of me taking a part that I've been selling, or a component that I've been selling, let's just say 200 US dollars, and now I'm going to probably have to charge like $400? Just know how much it costs to manufacture just because of one stupid little piece that's inside there. It's like it's
It's
so
a house of cards built on a house of cards built on a house of cards, and
yeah.
as you kind of go into the future. So like Taiwan, if anything goes like that, I hope you like them. I hope you like the iPhone or whatever Android phone you got right now, because you could be stuck with it for a while. You're not going to be getting brand new things for a while. But automotive, like well, I kind of worked in aerospace for a little bit as well, and like if you can kind of sell into aerospace, it's just basically like money fight, because you've guaranteed like a customer for like 15 to 20 years.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they have to you when you sell this chip, you pretty much almost have to sell the supply. Like when anytime they make a plane, they nearly have to have all the parts bought for the lifetime of the plane for 20 years. So they'll kind of go out and buy all these extra spare parts in advance before you actually, before they'll even fly it. And each plane, if you can imagine, each plane has got like a warehouse section somewhere, like the size of a small house, with all its documentation and all these spare parts just sitting there waiting for the day they might be used. And it's an insane amount of money. But and if you get in there, it's just like it's like, oh, we're gonna make so much money. But getting in there the first time is can be quite hard.
And you know what's so hilarious is, especially here in the United States, it's where you have all this advancement in aviation, and then on the opposite spectrum, you have the towers and the technology that's used to monitor these planes, and they're so old fashioned. They use technologies that are at this point 30 to 36 years old. And I'm like what you were saying, it's like you're investing in this whole warehouse just to keep this plane operational. You know, especially companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing are investing in these technologies that cost tens of millions of dollars just to keep up with industry standards. But yet, the same companies are supposed to monitor these planes that they should not crash use technology that is ancient. It's
Yeah,
just,
I don't know
it's
if you've seen the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
as
No, that's nearly 20 years old now, but like the whole reason why the ship survives is because they didn't update the technology. Is like they didn't have networked computers, so that's how the Cylons couldn't take over. So in some ways, like I know this will sound contrary, but they might actually be doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, but the right thing because, they're beginning to find now over in Russia, like GPS is can be spoofed, can be swamped. I think your one was Ursula von der Leyen. She was kind of flying around that part of the world, and they were spoofing her plane, and they were having to kind of fly by eye. So they're kind of all these kind of technology things that people have been relying on for so long. You can no longer rely on. It's like, how do we land a plane with an instrument landing system working? So what is it? Don't worry, you got the traffic controllers. They've got like these computers from the 80s, so they're not going to fail.
God. I think we were talking about this before, like when it comes to even cybersecurity.
Mm.
You have companies like Stellantis, Stellantis here in the United States to make Chrysler, Dodge, Ram, and Jeep and Fiat. And they have some of the worst security ratings out of any other manufacturer right now. I mean, it is so easy to steal one of these cars. Like, because the amount of technology they put, this is the problem too. They put technology in their vehicles that are coming from all these other different nations, these other different markets that know that they can take advantage of this corporation because they're going to look the other way anyway. That they're able to literally create a vehicle that is perfect to steal. Like, if you need a spin-off or like an example, it's like buy that. That's if you want to get your thing stolen, that's what you need to buy.
Yeah, so I was working on an idea a few years back. It's essentially what like like the Amazon Ring
Yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
idea. So I kind of like I thought of this very 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 similar idea just before the first iPhone came out. Once you kind of that kind of Bluetooth inside a phone, that's a kind of a computer. And I said, oh yeah, it would be cool like if someone could turn up at your house and you could make their phone like a key so they could open your door, but you could kind of turn it on and off, over the internet. And so I kind of worked on that for a bit. And there's a thing called a replay attack that if someone's kind of sitting nearby, if they can kind of see someone press the button, that they can capture it, and then they come up and they just do the same thing and it opens it. So there's a whole kind of security process of you sending a challenge and a response, and it means like you'll never have the same sequence in a row. And I spent a huge amount of time getting that working, and I got it working, and I never chased it up, and I could have been a bajillionaire now, but that didn't happen. But anyway, it was going to happen someday. Someone's going to do it, and I think what is Ring now is some kind of other company that Amazon might have bought along the lines. But it found it that they had no security in it. It was exactly the thing I was protecting against. It was you just sit in the middle, you wait for someone to press the button, you kind of record over the air, and then they would go up and they'd press it again. And I said, what are these guys getting paid for? What are they doing? That was like, should have been, 101. But it was mad.
What I think is really crazy is They have implemented that technology, like even within cards. You know, you can just walk up to a vehicle and the car opens up. But what's so bizarre is those cards that you use instead of your keys to open up your vehicle, or for example, having your smartphone in your pocket to open up the car, they charge you. They
Oh,
charge
well,
you
that's the
monthly.
magic thing. So I remember like a friend of mine. I think he had the first VW Golfs. These are an Oz, but I think your car would come like a standard, but you could kind of pay subscription and it would turn on the heated seats or something.
Hmm.
It's like the whole car is kitted out for this stuff, but you kind of don't get it as standard, But it's sitting there if you paid the subscription, and that's what everybody wants. So I was working when I was in Australia, I was working for a company that was involved in printing, and they're always obsessed with. No one wants to sell you printers. No one wants to sell you printers. They want to sell you the ink. They don't want to sell you they want to sell you the service, like these service plans are where they make all their money, and they were always trying to figure out, like, we'll give you the printer, we'll give you the paper, but we'll come in every other week and we'll top you up, and here is our subscription, and they just want to get you on that subscription, and it's, if you can get you on that now, and everything's on subscription. I mean, I think printing was the first kind of one part of the world, like in the business corporate where it started happening. But everyone said, God, look at how much money those guys are making. So you kind of see everywhere now. Microsoft and their 356, that subscription. It's all subscription. Adobe
Everything's subscription.
subscription. And then the problem is you stop paying your subscription, you lose it all. But Adobe's notorious. If you have like some project you've been working on and then you stop paying for it, you can never access it again. It's locked forever. And I know people that they're just terrified of losing access to their work, that I can't afford it. I just keep paying the subscription. Okay, it's $50 a month. I'll keep paying it.
You know, it's wild because people complain about, things getting expensive. And I'm like, does anybody ever think that one of the reasons why things get expensive is just the amount of subscriptions that you're paying per month? Like to keep your house operating. Like it turns out there are subscriptions even in your own home. Like from your coffee maker to your lighting to, I mean, if they could slap on a subscription, they're gonna slap on a subscription. You know?
Well, this is the wall garden kind of, and actually podcasting is kind of at the forefront of this. Is kind of, what is a podcast? What is a podcast? Is like, because like Joe Rogan is the famous guy who kind of is the kind of the vanguard. But is he a podcast anymore? Or when he went into Spotify and you could only get it through the Spotify app, he said, well, technically it's no longer a podcast.
I don't
It's
really consider him a podcaster. I really consider him to be an entertainer.
Oh, well, in terms of just a podcast, if it was a video, like an audio file that you could kind of, anyone can access it from any kind of internet enabled device, that was kind of what it was.
Yeah.
But once they kind of want to kind of get you into the walled garden, and Apple is notorious as well for trying to, you get you in here and you can't get out, or Instagram or any of those things. It's like, once you're in here, you can do whatever you want, but no one else. You have to go through our gateway, and everyone loves the control of the wall garden, particularly for podcasting. They they can kind of see, okay, how many listens they have, and then they can put that to the potential advertisers and say, well, who's listening to them and for how long and what's their demographic, and then they can charge and blah 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 blah. So they love that world. But I don't know. I think he kind of went in there. I mean, he got some great money, but I think he began to find, like, the restrictions were placed on him weren't that great, and the scope of kind of the people he could kind of reach were kind of more limited as a result. So I think he kind of began to realize it wasn't as good a deal for the exposure for himself, as it turned out to be. And the famous Obama deal with Spotify, or what's the royal family dudes, the Harry and Meghan, they were in there for a bit and getting silly money, and then I think they made like three episodes for like 20 million. If you get that money, that'd be great.
Oh
But
my gosh. It's crazy. Well, I think also what has happened is, and I've experienced this myself, it's where you have like you said, gatekeepers like YouTube, where they shadow ban podcasters that don't fit their algorithm or fit their mainstream. And you have other platforms, for example, like you have places now like Substack and you have places like Rumble, which
Substack's a good example. Yeah.
Substack is amazing. I mean, what's so bizarre is I do terrible on YouTube, but yet platforms like Rumble and Substack, I'm killing it. And that
Right.
alone like showcases to me as a podcaster where I'm not doing anything wrong. The problem is you have a system that's designed that if you're not profiting, you're not making them the money that they want you to do the way that they want you to do it. They don't want to have anything to do with you. They're like,
Oh yeah. Well,
we're not going to push
yeah.
you.
Well, look, I have a buddy of mine. He's been chasing his what, 10,000 subscribers. Or no, it's just 1,000. I think it's 1,000. And at 1,000 you can monetize. And he spent over a year chasing it, trying to figure out the algorithm, and he was kind of doing movie reviews. But do you do movie reviews of the fresh and bright new movies, or do you do something more classic? Or he's a bit of a sci-fi nerd like me, so he kind of would be more on the sci-fi horror kind of side of it. And he kept like trying, like because he kind of got he got a bit of notice, so he's starting to kind of get advanced copies. And he sort of said, you'd think, okay, the brand new movie that's coming out, maybe that should get a lot of views, but there's like about 50,000 other people reviewing that movie, so it kind of you weren't getting as many hits as you'd think, even though you might have a review out just before it came out in the cinema. But but trying to like figure out the algorithm and stay ahead of it, it was a nightmare. But anyway, eventually he did get to his thousand, he did monetize, and then he found out like his all his numbers just went weird. Like he was now he was inside their ecosystem of you know we're giving you money, so you have to you work for me now, this type of way. And he said like all his numbers are up now, and he can't figure it out, and he can't seem to kind of get anything like the type of viewing numbers he used to get.
This is why, like, it's very much a double edged sword. You know, you have to be able to figure out a way of being able to make it work for you. You know, it's nice to be able to monetize and it's nice to be able to have that level of control. But if it's not under, especially these days with podcasting, if it's not under your terms, where if I, as a podcaster, was forced to interview artists that I didn't want to interview, I wouldn't be doing this. One of the things that I love doing about this is I get to be able to talk to people that I want to talk to. I get to have the conversations that I want to have conversations with, and that's something that I think we relate to very well. It's like, it doesn't have to be the most exciting thing, even like people are like, oh, science is boring. I'm like, to you it's boring. To me it's exciting. It's like, I look forward to work on electronics on cars and people are like, are you nuts? And I'm like, I like it. It's fun, you know? But
But I have this thing. I've been working on something recently. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but I'll do timing, like very exact, like precision timing. We're talking down to the nanosecond level of time, bang, bang, bang. And I actually got a little GPS module, and GPS when you kind of set it up, when it acquires all the satellites, it has a little a little LED on it that starts blinking once per second, exactly, like every second. And there's something just very satisfying when you just see this kind of pulse going. And you go, okay, that's talking to like six satellites up there right now. This little dinky thing, probably something as small as that is talking to like six satellites right now.
it's
And
crazy.
you kind of go like, it's some amazing stuff that's happening right now. That like the whole uh like financial trading kind of use the sync from these GPS to kind of make a shit ton of money. Like if the GPS network went down tomorrow, like it would be like catastrophic for so many things that we just don't realize. Like so much of our kind of livelihood and systems are now based on this thing that we don't even pay attention anymore. And if it disappeared, we kind of would be really affected by. But it's like that. I kind of do mainly microchip design, but I work in the area it's called emulation, which is where we take a design before it goes to manufacture in like TSMC, at those 12 places, and we emulate it on a thing called an FPGA. which is a kind of a very special microchip that kind of can pretend to be other microchips. And I've been doing that for a few years, and it's kind of fun. It's sort of when it works. But I always like, you ever watch those behind the scenes of like big budget movies where they have the VFX guys on, and they're like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, and then they'll always say something like, but if you can see my work, that means I'm not doing my job. And it's like that's kind of it. If anyone kind of if I'm kind of getting in anyone's way, if I'm causing any kind of friction or my work isn't kind of just kind of making like people's lives easier, then I'm not doing my job. So that's kind of the but a lot of people just like if you're doing your job like what did you didn't do anything. It's like aha, you thought that, but
God. No, and what's interesting is how much how much that goes into it, because a lot of the times when you're working with things of this nature, there's a lot of intricate work that has to play. There's a lot of trial and error. You know, you can't just one thing that I think that's really fascinating that people kind of have lost and understand is these days when it comes to engineering, especially when you're dealing with the way how electronics are set up. For example, you have household appliances, or for example, you're doing more commercial appliances in that nature. You're even implementing something even like in regards to software. There's so many trial and error. There's so much process and of elimination that takes place in order to get there. That the immediate thing is like, ugh, boring. Just show me like the final product and result. It's like you're not understanding. In order for you to get the final product and result, you have to do all this shit beforehand in order to get there. That's the grind.
that's the job, and
Yeah,
it's not really what you're taught. Like uh, I went to college, got a degree in electrical engineering, but you're not really taught like how to debug a problem per se. You're just like you understand like the kind of the fundamentals, but it's like okay, you turn up like I think every problem I ever deal with starts with the phrase weird, that should work. And then
yeah.
that could be like 3 weeks of kind of trying to figure out what went wrong. But the yeah, it is amazing just like how there's so many layers built on layers built on layers, um and so many people now have to pull together. I mean, it's huge business. I mean, we I worked on a I was with a Irish company that had got acquired by Intel, and then I'd say we were working on one chip that kind of had the guts of three 400 people working on for one chip. So it's kind of very hard. I mean, that wasn't just the chip itself, it was the software and everything that's on top of it as well. But it's just no one kind of has that kind of clout, or small companies don't have that type of clout to kind of pull that many people together to work on stuff anymore. So that's why you only hear like the Nvidias are kind of what, 4 trillion. Apple up around 3 or 4 trillion. These are crazy money. You begin to sound like Dr. Evil now. I want a
Yeah.
trillion dollars. Um,
Apple though, it's kind of strange. Apple's no longer they're no longer a technology company. They're a marketing company. I mean, to
well,
be fit,
I'm actually I'm going to disagree with that. Because the unsexy truth is that they did actually. Of course, I was working in Intel at the time when this happened. They finally got off of Intel chips. They bought a company back now 15 years ago called PA Semi, and they started manufacturing their own chips in the background.
yeah,
And they must have put like serious, like we're talking hundreds of millions or billions behind this. But then about 4 or 5 years ago, they said, right, Intel, you're out. And they swapped in this brand new chip that was their complete chip, and it was called the M1. And it was they must have been like doing this in the background for like 4 or 5 years, but it came in, and now that all their iPhones and all are now on this Apple produced silicon. And
yeah.
that was actually, they probably will do studies on like how they effectively transition, because one thing don't want to do is piss off your customers. And
Which they've
they
already
didn't.
have. But yeah,
Well, for this they didn't. For
no,
this, they swapped it in, and it was so kind of smooth that no one really noticed it. So it was quite impressive, that one.
It is. I mean, that
Not that I have an iPhone.
no, well, I mean, you're right though. That is one thing that they have definitely. But what I'm talking about also, like besides, is as a company in regards to design and infrastructure from start to finish, in regards to the products that they're pushing out and they're implementing. A lot of it feels like it's still coming from other brands and other manufacturers. Apple really hasn't technically made a new product. For example, you're right. In regards to the internals, those things have started becoming more and more in house. But as a whole, as a brand,
Yeah, I was chatting to a friend about this recently. I always thought like the best time to be Apple to have a company like that was when they brought out the iPad because they had something like, I don't know, a stupid amount of like 50,000 or 100,000 people pre-order a product they didn't even know what it was. They said, we're going to release a product tomorrow. What is it? I'm not telling you. 50,000 people said, oh, I still want to buy it. And I do think there was something about this tablet that there was the kind of the last real major innovation that they kind of forefronted. Now he contradicted me and he sort of said, well, the AirBuds were kind of something innovative as well. And I'm kind of like, really? Like, wasn't that kind of in? Now, I've never seen them, I've never used them, so I don't know if they're that kind of any different than other um, those wireless buds. But he feels that that was their last big one. But even that, I think, is like over 5, 6 years ago.
yeah, I mean, it's weird because there's so many different added elements that goes into, like one thing that really stands out to me is like when you go back even further, there was a period where Apple made, which was called the lamp iMac, where they made this iMac that I don't think it was an iMac back then. I think it was still like their iBook series. Um, it used this basically the same component from their iBook series, and it was basically this disc, and there was this metal pole thing that was sticking out, and the screen was pivoted on there, and just
Oh, I know. Yeah,
the
yeah, I know.
engineering that went into that thing, and I'm just like, when has when has Apple ever made anything like that since? You know, and yeah, it was like absurd and didn't, doesn't have any like real like it's just design, but it's just an incredible piece of design. Just to think about the amount of
Some people like that though. I mean, I there was a TV show in the UK called The Grand Designs. I don't know if there's been an American clone of that, but the main guy who presents is a guy called Kevin McLeod. He's an English designer, but he kind of they did an Australian version of it, and he came over to Oz and gave a few talks, which me and my wife attended. Now she just absolutely adored him, and we met him and I kind of said, "Oh, Kevin, this is my wife here. She loves your show, and she would love for us to do a renovation for you to turn up and say hey, it looks like a car park." And he goes, "Oh yes, I've done that a few times." And she just turns and goes, "Oh no, see you." So she was kind of smitten, but he gave a talk and he was kind of going on about like that kind of iconic, that the candy color stuff that they were doing. Uh, I think it was first with the IMAX and then with
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
nanos and stuff. That wasn't them. Like that was some other thing that kind of had happened in the 60s that they kind of copied. And I forget exactly what it was, but he sort of said, "Look at this. Does this look familiar?" I said, "Yeah, it looks like Apple." I said, "No, this is from 1964." And even the kind of the curvy edges that they kind of the original iPod had that kind of obviously went into the iPhone and is still kind of there. That was some kind of very specific curve that he also kind of lifted from some other 1960s kind of iconic thing as well. Now, you should really not start a story like that and you have good examples. Like, other than I vaguely remember it was sort of like this. A guy told me, but
No,
it was
but
quite
you
impressive.
do no, you do have a point though. I mean, for example, some similarities like people don't even bother to look at is like, for example, the voice option on ChatGPT. If you really think about it, it's a copy and paste of HAL from 2001: Space Odyssey. That
Well, you and
re-
me, dude. You and
yeah,
me. That's just like it's sorry, Dave. I just can't do that.
yeah.
Uh, that was my exit. That was almost my kind of critical error, and I put onto a computer. I went back on the first time I could do that.
But you know, We do copy a lot of the times things that are from the past, and I think a lot of the times it's just to allow consumers and people to still be comfortable with the products. You know, there were times in the past where we mentioned about certain technologies that now that they exist, and it's very eerie in how they exist, but they're still very reminiscent of like the futuristic designs of what they were in the past. Like obviously they're not exactly like the 60s. Like the 60s was like people are going to be living on pills and people are going to live on Alpha Centauri by the year of 1999. I'm like none of that ever happened.
Fuck all that, right? No, I'll tell you the big problem I have with the predictions of the future and the reality. Okay, so I'm gonna be 50 next year, right?
Yes.
I'm still in pretty good shape. I still do mountain biking, my knees haven't gone yet. But in 1989, they had Back to the Future 2, and in Back to the Future 2, they had hoverboards. And in 1989, I was 13, right? And I wanted hoverboards, those floating things. And it's just like, yeah, it's only a matter of when, not if. And here I'm like facing 50, and I still no hoverboards. And I've got about 10 years those things need to turn up because if they turn up in 10 years, there's no point. There's no point because I'm not going to be able to go on one. So it's a complete waste of the time.
I mean, I think today technically we could make hoverboards. It's not a technology that we can't accomplish to make. I mean, I'm sure people will come up with excuses as to why you can't, but they did make the shoes where it has retractable shoelaces.
I don't care. I want the hoverboard. Where's the hoverboard?
What do you think? Do you think from an engineering perspective that we are in a technological place in time that we could make something like that? I think we can.
I don't know. I think that kind of repulsive effect, I don't think we have quite yet, except maybe in a very specific environment, like an ice rink where you have a kind of an area that's kind of magnetically treated. But there's other stuff. I mean, it kind of the banality of the stuff that we kind of get used to is kind of is freaky. Um,
FaceTime. They dreamed about
it
that in the
just
60s, and we have that
Yeah, but
now.
all that sort of stuff. But like like it's jetpacks, right? Jetpacks is always the one that they kind of go on about. But like jetpacks do exist. They
Yeah,
actually exist.
yeah.
But they're just like so expensive. But there's one day I think I was like, what was I doing? I think I was just doing documentation for some requirements or something banal. It's the kind of the unsexy side of the unsexy project. And then I saw a video about like some guy or like some rescue service in the UK were trialing jetpacks for rescue for on mountains. Mountain rescue. I said, what am I doing with my life? Right now, people are using jetpacks to do something, and here I'm doing like requirements. I need to,
Up your
we need to
game.
kind of, we need to like reappraise what's going on.
But you know what though? It's kind of the sentiment of its time. It's where I'm sure you've realized this also in your career where things used to be a lot more difficult than it was 20 years ago has become increasingly a lot more easier to do now. And yeah, there's
Yeah,
been like
but you get the cruft of that. It's sort of, when we used to kind of do verification of stuff, and it was expensive, so you had to be considerate. And because of that, you
yeah,
kind of didn't really kind of go heavy at it unless you was something. But now you got all this compute power. Just throw everything at it, and then you just get like screeds and screeds. You just get absolutely snowed in information, and you can't. It's all there, and like 90% of it's like everything's great, you know, and you're trying to kind of get through it all, and it's like if you kind of sat down and maybe kind of thought about it like the way you used to, maybe you would find you don't have as much work to do. That it's actually not as good as you think. But there's this kind of thing. It's just sitting there. We'll just throw it at it. So I'm experimenting with AI right now, and I'm not impressed. I am seriously not impressed. I had a test, an existing test that I want to translate into a different format, and I told it like just translate this from this to this, and it couldn't pass this one test, so it deleted the test. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not how we do it. That's not how we do it. It's like, oh yeah, I couldn't get it to pass, so I got rid of it. No, 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 no. That's what I do. Computers don't do that. So now you're kind of you second guess it all. It's like what else is it messing up? What else is just saying too hard won't try. You know, it sounds like that kind of surly intern you get. It's like I was working really hard, but I wanted to go for a smoke, so I never got back to it. It was like that kind of level.
No, and it's kind of baffling because people are they put the level of how onto AI, and I'm like one of those individuals that I'm like, it's it's not that intelligent. I mean, we think of it as being like superior, but really all it is, and I've even spoken to like even a programmer, it's just a over glorified language algorithm. That's what it
Well,
is.
it's a predictive algorithm,
Yeah,
and it is the most average answer of the most average. Is basically the center of life, and yeah, it is kind of I mean, it's quite impressive,
it
and
still
then
is. I mean, it's incredible
you know,
technology. I mean, it's
but it reminds me like a
storing.
friend of mine. She was like a psychologist or a psychotherapist, one of those. I think it was psychotherapist. And I said, yeah, whenever you're kind of struggling, you just say to him like, and how does that make you feel? And I just kind of have a feeling like that's all the LLMs are doing. They pick up on these kind of phrases that we kind of respond to. It's like, how does that make you feel? Oh, and then you get like, thousands of kind of like words out of you after that.
You know, it's it's funny because I remember I was reading an article about this a while ago, and how human beings, as clever and as smart as we are, we're very easily manipulated. Like they've run tests and things. It's very easy to manipulate people. Very easily. Like, you can make somebody believe anything you want them to believe. With the right amount of information and the nice amount of expertise and all of that. It's like, I'm not saying that we're stupid in any shape or form, but it's still that understanding that like we're still very naive creatures. We take things very much at face
We're
value.
trusting. Like I had a bit of exposure to crypto back in the day, and not that I'm going to advocate for crypto. I'm just going to say it made me realize that actual money is kind of, when you really, really think about it, insane. It doesn't exist. It actually doesn't exist. It's just a
No.
kind of a an imaginary idea we've all decided to agree on, all of us, and because we all agree on it, it exists. And it's just mental, and you kind of start pulling it apart, and you kind of like, okay, but I got money in the bank. He said, really? Have you seen it? Have you ever seen it? Last time I saw a paycheck, I was like 21, and after that, it all went online. I've never seen a penny. I meant to have this. I don't know how much I have. If I turn up in the bank, will they give it to me? But like everyone kind of is just believes it, and unfortunately, being someone like me who says this, like you're actually breaking the reality of it,
Yeah. I mean,
and there's so many other things like that.
no, but you touched on something that's really true. And, nobody thinks about this for a second, but all the bank is doing is when you see in your bank account, let's just say, it's showing that you have, 1,200 pounds, or 2,000 pounds or whatever the amount is. And that's what they're showing you. But the reality is the bank, every single time you put money in your account, takes your money and uses it.
Yeah,
They don't,
it's fractional reserve. Yeah, it's no, but everyone knows that that's how it works, and it's like
they're
that's
okay
the
with it.
famous
Yeah.
thing, and like yeah, everyone points to Mary Poppins. There's an example of a bank run. Someone says they're going to buy something for a penny or something, and then everyone goes to the bank and tries takes out their money, and then they find out, well, the bank doesn't have all that money. And and it's sort of yeah. Anyway, that's my gateway in to kind of try and make people understand that that's an imaginary world that we all agree in. So other imaginary worlds kind of exist as well that we all kind of agreed in, and because the state is going to look after you, that's a responsibility, and mostly it does. Like I can't speak too much of what's happening in America because I don't live there, but we've had some cases in Ireland where the people have rang the police and the phone network has just been overloaded, and either a police officer hasn't been sent out, or an ambulance hasn't been sent out for someone who's like been in a medical condition, and I think that there's been some deaths as a result of that. So that's kind of violated the kind of the social contract that it works, and people go, well, those are mistakes and they can happen, and but as we move into like a greater technology world, these things aren't supposed to happen as much anymore.
No.
So
No, and the opposite effect of what's happening in the U.S., and I've had basically a conversation with somebody about this, is there's an illusion here in the U.S. of what's called cheap. So there's this idea of you want to work somewhere where you get paid well, and then your rent or your mortgage is cheap. But it's an illusion because these states here in the US that quote unquote it's cheaper to live, the governments have figured out ways of making it more expensive. So they'll be like, oh, it's tax free. But then they'll figure out other monopolies of taking your money away from you, either by having where
so
groceries will cost more, it'll be harder to get mortgages, property taxes won't make any sense. You'll have, for example, even warranties on your home, right? Like example, I'm here in Florida. There'll be warranties on this home where you'll have, let's just say, quote unquote, hurricane insurance, but they won't cover if there's flooding. You have hurricane insurance, but won't cover because you don't have flooding. You only have hurricane insurance,
it could just be the wind only ones. It.
right? And I'm like, I don't know about you, Dave, but it's like, when you have a hurricane, there's something that happens when a hurricane happens. Oh, that's right, it floods, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've only like, we don't get technically don't get hurricanes over here. We get a ricochet. I think we got one or two ricochets over the past like 30 years. But I was in one hurricane in Ocean City, Maryland, back in '96, and
It's been a minute.
I don't know. I didn't. Did you know this about? Let's see how you know about America. Do you know the highest point on the eastern seaboard from? I think it's all the way from the top of Maine down to Florida.
Um, I would say the Adirondacks, but it's probably
No, no, no.
not.
I mean on the coast, on the coast.
The highest point?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I would think
I'll give you.
Maine.
No, it's in New Jersey. It's Highlands. They're just the back of Sandy Hook,
Really?
and like that means the whole East Coast is pretty much just flat sandbar. You know, it's always going to flood. You got like no cliffs there at all along there.
No.
And like when I was in Ocean City, I don't know if you know it. It's kind of like a
Yeah,
big sandbar,
it's near inlet.
and I think
Ocean City,
yeah, well,
New
well the
Jersey.
inlet.
Yeah.
No, this is Ocean City, Maryland. Um, it has an inlet, but that inlet didn't exist until 1930 when a hurricane blew through it and kind of smashed it open. So it's when I was there, I think it was Eduardo came through, and I remember we woke up and the whole boardwalk was like shredded. It all been kind of tons of kind of planks being lifted.
My God. It's wild because the more you talk about technology, you think that here's another thing that marvels engineering, right? You build an entire city like Miami. It's built on marshland. It's built on swampland. So there's no bedrock underneath. It's just very thick amount of sediment and mud, and then there's just straight ocean. There's nothing underneath. There's no rock,
Yeah,
nothing.
right.
And then these engineering geniuses think, you know what we should do? We should build skyscrapers. That's what we should do. We should build skyscrapers. And it's crazy when you drive through Miami, the amount of streets that are like this, and then one's cracked like this, one's cracked like this, a building is tilted like this, one building is tilted like this. I'm like, did anybody did anybody
Well, I,
think before
well,
doing any of this?
I'll give you some. Like I'm originally from a place in Ireland called Cork. Cork
Okay.
is Irish for it comes from the Irish Corkig, which means marsh. So and the whole city is built basically in a river delta, really. And for like it's nearly like it's nearly 800 years old. So this is not kind of a recent a recent invention. And when I was a kid, when I used to be walking home from school and you have a high tide, you would see kind of the river like bubbling up through the cracks in the street. And and they still don't get it. Like they a few years back, okay, this may be going back about 10, 15 years, they built a brand new um, extension to the university near the river, and they had a kind of a computer lab in the basement, a brand new computer lab with all new kit, and then of course they had this massive flood, and the whole place got wiped out. And it's like, but where is the surprise? The place gets flooded all the time. It's been getting flooded for like 800 years. So
Yeah, that's genius. Let's waste money on technology and computers that cost money and put it in a basement, in a place that's built on
at least put
marshland.
it at least put it in the penthouse and on
Yeah,
top
put it
of
on
the
the
roof or
top
something.
floor. Like, my God. You know,
Anyways, look,
I
no, anyway, my point is this happens everywhere. It's like there'll always be some excuse. Oh, it won't happen this time. I don't know that last those other 157 times, fluke won't happen again.
and man, I'm sorry to go back into this, but one of the things that drives me crazy, you have engineers that design vehicles. For example, even like Subarus and Audis. You have this whole same thing with Land Rover, and they put things in places, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, why did you do that? I'll give you a great example. Some Audi vehicles have where they put the starter for the vehicle behind the engine on top of the transmission.
Okay.
So you have a component that's already exposed to an immense amount of heat. Okay, it's a starter. It gets an immense amount of voltage that goes in through there. It gets hot. So you take something that already gets hot and you put it in an area that gets hot. And then you wonder
Yeah.
why so many times people are coming in for starter issues. And then it
Well, maybe
costs $6,000 to get fixed because you have to take out the engine and the transmission just to get the starter.
there you go. That's the reason why.
Yeah.
Built-in obsolescence. Like my dad tells me stories about like how when they would drive like a distance of maybe 200 miles or even 150 miles, they used to have to bring the car into like the shop to make sure it was kind of ready to do a distance like that. That these guys they're not used to like these cars you buy and you drive around for like maybe a year to get serviced, and then it gets serviced and yeah, there's nothing wrong there, we just changed the oil, and then it goes for another like year or 2 years, and like a brand new car effectively with the exception of the oil, if it's done just right, could probably go 3 years with no tweaking on the brakes, no tweaking on anything. That's an amazing reliability situation. So how are they going to sell more cars? If these things go forever. So you got to kind of get this technology, this built-in obsolescence. It's how I get paid, man. So stop messing with the golden goose.
No, it's also the same thing with appliances, man. Like, people are like, I'm gonna be one of those boring when it comes to even like with refrigerators, right? They have this technology now where they put screens. Okay, we both understand technology, right? Okay, let's walk this through this. You have something that's cold that creates moisture, and you put a giant screen on this thing that collects moisture and gets cold, and you wonder why the screen has problems and it glitches.
Uh, well, you're wearing glasses, right? So
Right.
I don't wear glasses anymore. I got my eyes zapped years ago. But particularly in Ireland, I used to always be that curse. You kind of go into like a pub from a cold, from being cold,
Fogs
fogged
up.
up straight away. Yeah, that was always a pain in my ass. Just cold glasses inside into a humid environment.
It's crazy. And again, man, it's like we have technologies to combat this. But then the problem is you got the engineers that design fogless glasses, right? But the lenses for fogless glasses cost 10 to 15 times more than a regular pair of lenses. So, if, for example, a pair of lenses, I'm going to use British terminology, say a regular pair of lenses will cost you, 35 quid. the same lenses that are anti-fog can cost upwards of like 245 pounds. It's the same lens. All they're doing is putting on a coating. And for some odd reason, that coating is now worth like a stupid amount. I'm like, it, I want to get into that market.
Loads of money.
Yeah, let's get into that market.
Yes,
Let's sell that liquid.
but well, but if you can find your market, you can. Like, here's my killer idea, right? Killer
Yes,
idea. I'm bringing it to you, and anyone who wants to get in on the ground floor, I'm taking VC funding. With AI and the rise of like, cameras and identifying people, being able to kind of track people, I think there's going to culturally be a rise in people wanting to wear masks, just kind of, full face masks so they can't identify your face. But it'll be it'll be kind of, people still want to be stylish,
of
so
course.
the people, so there will be a big market and people just kind of wear, like, a bit like those anonymous masks, and people will kind of that will become the new thing, and it'll be like the ringtones, people buying ringtones like 20 years ago. These masks are just going to explode. So I'm taking money, I'm taking investment. You get in at Dave's Masks. You can go in that, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge.
I gotta ask you. I mean, we've been talking like this whole time. I know that you have a website. I know you also do podcasting. You do also comedy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
do you you still do podcasting full time, don't you?
Oh, I've been on a break. I had two podcasts. I did a technology one. I had a good friend of mine. He and I kind of are about a similar wavelength, and that was weird. We actually was unusually popular with our friends, because like you tell people you do podcasts, you go, yeah, great. They say, well, yeah, well, here's the link if you want. Yeah, yeah. And they never listen to it. No one ever listens to your podcast, not your friends. They might go, oh, yeah, or they might listen to one. Oh, I listened to one. But no, but it's actually people we worked with were actually listening to it. It's like, wait, you did actually listen to it. Oh, okay. Right. Okay, great. Yeah. So, and they were saying, you should do a thing. Okay, okay. So you're not joking. Okay, I thought you were just fucking with me. All right.
Oh my
So
god.
that was one. Should get back to that one. He got quite busy. So, and another one was like with comedy, uh, based, but I was kind of more interested in. So I'm kind of Irish, but grew up on American and UK TV. So UK TV. So there's Irish TV, there's British TV, there's American TV, there's Australian TV, and a little bit of Kiwi and a little bit of South African, and they're all English. And I kind of I moved to the States. I worked in New Jersey for a few years, and it was people always kind of go, would think I'd be quite different because I was from a different country. But then it's like I grew up watching exactly the same TV as them, exactly the same, and I was able to kind of talk about TV shows they grew up on. So, well, you're from Ireland. How would you know that? You didn't see that. I said, I did because
Ireland's
we
not a
watched your
third
TV.
world country. It's
Yeah,
like
we grew up on the Littlest Hobo and the A Team and Knight Rider and Star Trek and Eeyore and Friends. We all grew up with all that. Like that's part of it. So,
yeah.
but then I kind of America wouldn't quite get the same Australian content, at least back then. It'd be a bit now, but we kind of grew up on Australian TV. So when I moved to Australia, it was exactly the same thing, kind of effect, that I kind of grew up on some stuff that they grew up on, and that they wouldn't have grown up on my stuff. But then began to kind of realize, okay, well, you have a humor style, and I know yours, but you don't know mine. And then in America, I'd know their humor style, but they wouldn't know mine. I kind of wanted to talk about, okay, well, let's talk about kind of what works here and what doesn't work there, and
Right.
that was kind of the concept. And I was trying to get people. I got like some guy from Russia, I got a guy from Greenland, I think I got a few others. But I end up getting like just loads of Americans, which was kind of not the point. I was just kind of trying to go around the planet. I was looking for, people from Malaysia and you name it, anywhere. But it was got really hard to kind of find people in different countries. So I would love to kind of go back. I'd love to kind of get just one from every country and just kind of go around the world, because they always going about the French, like in, I don't know, Jerry Lewis. That was kind of always the cliche about like what the fuck are they laughing at? But there was kind of, there was always like a weird kind of thing that was different about a culture, and once you kind of could understand what they were enjoying and how it was different, you kind of okay, I kind of get them now, and I kind of I can kind of align with them better.
Yeah,
So
I
that
love
was kind
that.
of because like
You're
Americans are a bit more bombastic and we're great, we're confident. Hey, I can do it, you can do it, everyone can do it. Whereas Irish was no no I couldn't do that myself, no no no. And then the Aussies are kind of they're a bit more kind of confident, oh yeah, well we'll see what we can do, but they're less kind of bombastic, but yeah we'll get it, you'll get it.
different environments. And I think that's
Hmm.
honestly something really cool, especially like with podcasting and even with comedy, even if it's, for example, engineering comedy. You.
But that's not my main thing. That's just kind of where I landed.
No, but honestly, it gives you an upper niche. It gives an upper hand in the sense of where you have an understanding of different cultures. Being able to
Uh,
explore into those different avenues. It's like
Well,
you.
that would be where my comedy came from. So I'm an Irish person, but I'm an Australian comedian because I started there, and I started performing as that kind of observer of a culture who's not from the culture. That kind of was my style. I'd lived there for I think how long was it? It must have been like 8 or 9 years by the time I started, and they kind of like being told about what they're like, sort of from an outside in, but someone who's lived there enough to kind of have observations that are kind of interesting. And of course, I had the accent, and the Aussies love the Irish accent. Not every country likes the Irish accent the same way, but the Aussies just love it. And they told me never to get rid of it because they really liked it. And I did find I would get a bump, like I people would want me to perform, have me on the bill because okay, we've got like all these middle class, middle aged white dudes, but you got an accent, so you get on, and just it was enough to kind of get me. Now, when I moved back here, and everybody else has the same accent as me, I always found like that kind of that handicap that was kind of getting me on had disappeared. I was like, oh, okay, now we all sound the same. Okay, I gotta now try and be funny, and not just kind of say just sound funny.
No, but I think that's honestly it's interesting. I think the Irish accent is one of those, as hard as you try to get rid of, you can't get rid of it. British people have a tendency when they come to America, they're like amphibians. They stay British to a certain extent, but they Americanize. Their accent gets a little
Well, no,
softer.
I can go. I can go American if I need to. I mean, I did find like the best way to do it was the it was Tim Roth in Reservoir Dogs. I got the connection to Hippie Chip and Santa Cruz, and all my friends knew and say, "Hey, dude, you getting some? You get some for me too." Like they knew I still smoked, so I had to buy some for them. I was buying it for me. Soon it got to be. Every time I bought some weed, I was buying it 4 or 5 different fucking people. So that was kind of. But he's English, so like that was his kind of his gateway in,
His thing.
and
Yeah.
so I found that was kind of enough. And then after living in Jersey for 2 years, that it just you just slow everything down. You don't speak as fast, and you just say you're all set a lot.
Yeah,
Normal.
it's weird. I mean, for me, it's like I have a New York accent, but because I've lived in just so many different places, like I have a New York accent with like a southern lisp. I don't talk as fast as I used to. And I kind of
Yeah, I can get that. I'd be my American experience was Boston, New York, New Jersey, a bit of Maryland. But then I was starting to work with people who were in North Carolina, and I had that more drawl,
and they
Well, you
talk
guys, you can
slow. Yeah.
slower.
It's
And then
so
for me,
annoying.
I'd be coming in really fast. Yeah,
I would take Boston. Listen, we New Yorkers, we don't like Boston. We don't like the accent at all. I take Boston over North Carolina any day because that
really
conversation.
what them's fighting words. I know I didn't like Boston as like those kind of ass, the very that kind of long ass, the
Sorry, no
uh,
offense to people in Massachusetts. Just no,
he's in
no.
Florida, but guys, he's in Florida. But but it was kind of it was interesting. It just I don't know they could be like, next stop, not Bellrica, and goes, well, if it's not Bellrica, then where is it?
Um, you mentioned that you have some comedy gigs that you're doing locally in your area. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been kind of semi-retired for a little bit. I went and had children. Children are fantastic, except the time they need you the most are exactly the same time when comedy gigs are on. So getting out of the house and trying to do gigs kind of didn't quite work. But now the youngest is 3, so I'm finally able to get some free time again and get back out again. So I've got a few gigs now next month. I'm looking forward to getting back out. I was actually really lucky. I had the same thing last year, and then a few weeks later, I just happened to be in Lisbon,
mhm.
and I found out on they had an English comedy night just around the corner from where I was, and I kind of turn up and say, "Hey, could I get on?" And they're like, "Yeah, you have to be funny." I said, "Yeah, I am." And it's like, "No, but seriously, you really have to be funny." And so that's always like every time like trying to get gigs. Dave's like, I don't know who you are. You could be just some like psychopath who thinks they're funny, but it turns out you're awful. So no, no, just trust me. And then they kind of you get up there and say, oh, okay, you are funny. You know, why'd you say so? I did. You weren't listening. Anyways, I kind of got a few gigs over there, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, if anybody wants to listen to your podcast, you have them available on most platforms. Do you have
Oh yeah,
them?
they're everywhere. Yeah, so Gurus of Comedy is my main comedy podcast, and the Future's Not Set is our technology podcast, and we're still tracking number 41 on good pods in the technology space. They say, "Well, you're doing fantastic." I was like, "Oh, that's great." So
You have, of course, you got social media and stuff. If anybody wants to reach out to
yeah,
you,
Dave Keeshan will get me everywhere. Davekeshan, and you might be getting a bit too old, but when I first arrived in America, all Americans could always pronounce my second name correctly. And this guy used to go, "Hey, you know Captain Kangaroo? Yeah, you know Bob Keeshan? Yeah, this is Dave Keeshan." And everybody got my name after that. But then recently I was working the Americans in North Carolina, and I go, "Who's Captain Kangaroo? I'm not your that is." So it's kind of getting to age out now.
leave it up, leave it up to them, man. Oh man, I have to tell you, like, it's sometimes just a fresh of breath air to just like geek out and nerd out for just a good hour. You know,
Cool.
just get a good term of experience. And my God, sometimes you don't always need the top of the line. You just need good comedy. In your case,
That's all you want.
as you put it,
The secret of comedy. The secret of comedy is not the funniest. It's the person who turns up and say just for 10, 20 minutes says, "Hey, relax, I got this." And as long as you can have that attitude, the audience will come with you. If you're not kind of hitting bang, 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 as long as you kind of have that kind of comfort for them, they come along with you because that's all they want. They just want enjoyment, you know. So
yeah,
I think that's for everything.
yeah, 100%. Well, listen, man, I really appreciate you taking the time and talking with me. And again, like, getting a little bit with specifics with things, especially different industries and stuff, and hashing
Yeah,
out some
you
good
may have to
fun
cut.
story.
You may have to cut some of that out. They're going to lose the audience. What the hell is that all about?
Sorry, sorry. I'm gonna make sure I'll leave your links and everything below, so if anyone wants to check out your podcast or check out your work, and I'll of course
Very nice.
obviously like, tag you on social media. So,
Sweet.
but
Yeah.
yeah, again, thank you so much, man. And anybody out there, if you want to check out more of the podcast, you can find us at Lost in the Groove Pod. We are on Rumble and we are on Substack. So with that, the fuckers, catch you. All right, peace out.
Cheers.